especially when these horrific things are happening. Rioting last night in Charlotte after a black man was shot and killed by a black police officer. And, of course, the thing that happened in Tulsa. And also the Kaepernick stuff, the kneeling during the national anthem. We're in the midst of this whole thing right now. Let's go to Terry first, who is in Utica, has been waiting quite a while, with a question for Steve Hauck. Terry, you're on the radio. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. You're on.
All right. Steve Hauck.
Yes.
He's here. Yep.
Can you hear? Hey, Steve Hauck, I talked to you in 2005. I don't know if you remember me on Oneida Street. My brother Walter Washington was killed by a police officer in Utica, and you literally described to me how it was done. You literally put your fingers on my side to tell me that that's what happened. And that turned from his left hand to his right hand. So I want you to explain to me right now on TV how that really happened, because there's so many stories, and to this day, 11 years later, we don't have an answer for it. So when you come up with that, and I see you on TV, it angers me because I love police officers. It's just the story that you told me, the story that the DA told me, and the story that I heard from Chief Powellman at the time. Still not true. There's three different stories.
First of all, I want to ask Steve: is this something you can talk about in public on the radio?
I can talk some basics. As far as specifics, I can't without it in front of me. But
obviously,
basics,
Terry,
sure.
this is a very difficult situation for you.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for your call. And Steve, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're on the spot here. So
sure.
Obviously, some things you probably can't say, but go ahead.
Well, obviously, without having been there that night, I was there that night immediately afterward, but obviously not involved in the shooting itself. I can only go by the information that we learned through the investigation immediately and then as the days went on.
Yeah.
So immediately preceding the shooting, there were, I believe, at least one, maybe several phone calls to a location on Oneida Street from a woman who called feeling threatened. By her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, not exactly sure. So the officers had been there a couple of times and not found anybody. They left. They were called back there. Upon coming back there, some of those newer homes out on Oneida Street at the time, this was several years ago, when they got there, they went to the back of the house, and at that point they encountered Mr. Washington. If I was back there that night, it was very, very dark. It was very tough to see. At one point, the officers thought they saw a gun. They ordered him to drop it. He didn't. They fired, or one officer fired. When I got there, it was a BB gun. I had to actually get right over the top of it to be able to see exactly what it was. It was a black BB gun. There was also, I think he had a knife and some other things, gloves.
Yeah.
And it was, I believe it was pretty sure it was summertime.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Terry?
That's incorrect. There was a BB gun they said they found, but there was no prints ever on it, no knife, no club or nothing like that. But I remember being back there, being in the same position. I'm bigger than him, but I'm younger than him, and you couldn't even see what I had in my hands. Conco told me that they couldn't even see him. They had to actually work on him with their flashlights because it was so dark back there. So how an officer's going to see something, that's beyond me. But go ahead.
Well, officers carry flashlights, so and oftentimes it's one of the things we do tactically in the dark is we use flashlights at the same time. And it was very, very dark. I had to get right over the top of the gun to be able to say exactly what it was. And once I stood 6-8 inches from it, I could see it was a BB gun. But in the dark, in the alley like that, and I know it's a tough time for you, Terry, and I certainly have compassion for the family and for you. But officers have to make very tough decisions, very quick. Without much information, unfortunately. So, that was a situation that it was investigated thoroughly. It was investigated by the DA's office thoroughly, presented to the grand jury.
It wasn't investigated real thoroughly because it was never due process. Due process meaning it has to let Mike Arcuri should have let that go to the grand jury. He never allowed it to go to the grand jury. Why? Because he didn't believe it would actually get out of grand jury and he would be indicted. That's my belief, because my brother was actually shot under his left armpit, which means he had his hands up because he's a right-handed man.
Well, you would also have that if you had your hand up with a handgun in your hand, if you were pointing it.
No, I'm sorry. If you got your hand up and he shot under his left armpit and his right arm he's right-handed and his gun, that's an awkward position to be pointing a gun at the cop, one hand up and that's your left hand, and the other hand pointing at the cop, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, Terry, I think it's one of those situations where and I do remember speaking to you, and you were a gentleman, and you were it was very nice speaking with you. I think it's one of those situations that the family perhaps will never find peace with it. I can tell you that we did the absolute best job we could at the time to investigate it, and I fully believe that the officer was totally justified in that situation. I know it's difficult for you. It's your family. If it was my family, I would feel the same way.
All due respect, when you have a incident like that, the police cannot investigate their own self. You have to bring an outside agency.
That's not true.
Hold on. So therefore, I don't believe there was a thorough investigation in that. That's just me.
All right.
No, I understand, and I understand where you're coming
Terry,
from.
I think what Steve has said is that if he was in your shoes, he might feel the very same way.
Correct.
And from, if I can just kind of get in, I don't know what happened. I don't remember the story, but at the same time, it's I think it's a very difficult position, which is why I don't know that I would ever. You're gonna have a hard time recruiting police officers in the next 10 years with everything that's going on today, because
and
I
it's
think
sad. And it's sad because
sad.
let me tell you something. I believe in police officers. I love police. I know a lot of police officers. There's a lot of good in police officers, but there's probably some bad seeds that don't do their job, and this is one of them here. And Powellman at the time didn't do his job neither. And, excuse me, Mike Arcuri didn't do his job at the time neither.
Right.
That's just my belief. And me as a person who has to still tell my kids to respect police officers, it's hard, but I have to do that because their job is hard enough, and I don't need to add to theirs. But in the same time, I still can feel the way I do about my brother and how that whole situation went down.
I can't tell you how you feel, but I lost a brother as well. It was not to a
brother. That was my second brother. That's the sad part.
It was not to a gunshot, but it doesn't matter, does it? I mean, a car accident it doesn't matter. And it's very difficult, and it never goes away. It will never go away. It's been 11 years for you. It will never go away, and I'm sorry to hear that it happened. But I think this is the best answer we can give you here right now.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
all right, Terry.
Thanks,
tough
guys.
call, and we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was tough.
No, hey, listen,
Yeah.
and I've spoken to Terry before, and I said it to him when I had a conversation with him, and I say it now that I feel bad for him, and I don't know, understand that I didn't know Mr. Washington at all, had never dealt with him before, and I don't know what was going through his head that night. I don't know. I just know that what the information the police officers had that night when they got there, based on the situation, I don't think I would have done it any differently than they did.
And we're talking about this case that happened in Charlotte, of course, last night, Tulsa a couple days before. Again, a very tough position. And now, whether this woman is in the right or she was in the wrong, whatever we end up finding out, these police officers have to live with what happened as well. The family has to live with the nightmare, but I think the part that we do forget about is that police officer has to live with that nightmare, questioning themselves: did I make the right move? Could I have done something differently? Living with the fact that they actually took a life.
And when you shoot. It doesn't matter, I suppose, if anybody would, a private citizen, military, police, is that you're faced with your own mortality for a split second, but you're faced with it right then and there.
Right.
And you use justifiable force. When you use deadly physical force, you yourself are faced with sort of your own mortality right then and there.
Right.
Whether you're shot or not, or you're still facing it. So I think there's just some stresses that go along with that. And then you have to say to yourself, how do you sort of pick up the pieces and go back to what you do every day and do it safely and do the job correctly? I think that's tough.
Tough all the way around. And Terry, we certainly feel for you and your family, but I'm not sure that today we can change anything at this point.
No, and I think that's I can just guess that that's probably one of the harder things is as the years go on, your memory sort of changes, and things that are important to you become more important. Things that maybe you want to downplay, at least in your own mind, sort of become irrelevant. And all I can go by is the information that we had that night.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was there, so I do
You were
know.
there after the fact.
I was there probably within 30 seconds of it happening. So.
All right, line 7360186. Let's sit tight. I want to come back and talk about Charlotte and your take on that, what happened in Tulsa, which I think there's more to this than we really know. Lines are also loaded up, 7360186, so sit tight. We'll come right back at WIBX.